Students, so hope you are doing well. So here is the another passage, and on the basis of the passage, some of the questions are given, and the direction for question is what? Answer the following question based on the information given below. Well, let's go to the text and try to understand the passage. The passage states here, it has long been assumed the process of reversing sex selection doesn't happen until countries are richer than India or China are now. One of the few to have succeeded in ending the practice is South Korea, where the sex ratio at birth peaked in 1990 and has since fallen to near normal levels. South Korea did not manage fully to reverse the trend until its GDP per person had reached about $12,000. China is now $8,400. India is $3,700. Both countries have been campaigning against sex selective abortion for years, making it illegal to terminate pregnancies just because parents want a son or to inform parents of the sex of a fetus. Launching Save the Daughters or Save the Daughter campaigns, and in India's case, enlisting Bollywood stars to sing the praises of girls. All it seems to no avail. Now, however, comes evidence that India may in fact be succeeding. In a pair of articles, Sujit Valla, an economist, and Ravinder Kaur, sociologist, use a different set of figures to get a different results. On the basis of the National Sample Service (NSS), they calculate that India's sex ratio at birth swung from 924 females per 1,000 males in 2004 or 5 to 977 in 2011. A stunning turnaround in favor of girls, the NSS figure is not comparable to the census. It shows the sex ratio at birth, whereas the census shows the ratio for children aged 0 to 6, but there are reasons for thinking the NSS is reliable. The sample size of 1,25,000 households is large, and when the NSS does produce figures comparable to the census, they closely match it. The new figure represents a very big change. A sex ratio of 977 girls to 1,000 boys is closer to what prevailed in the 1960s than it is more recent decades. So it is possible that the sex ratio has begun to change recently in ways not captured by the census. Mr. Valla and Mrs. Kaur pin the explanation squarely on the um, behavior of parts of India's middle class. What they call the mature middle class, those with an annual income of 1,70,000 rupees for a family of five, no longer practices sex selections. The authors understand this slice of the population has almost doubled in size in 6 years, from 27% in 2005 to 50% in 2011. So its preferences explain the change in the figures. The argument might seem to contradict the view that sex selection rises as people get richer. In fact, at slightly lower level of income. The link is as strong as ever. Mr. Valla and Ms. Kaur find sex selection has run rampant among what they call the emerging middle classes, those with an income of 90,000 to 1,70,000 rupees a year. But since this group has declined as a share of the population from 68% in 2000 to 41% now, their preferences have a smaller impact. When the 2011 census appeared, some Indians agonized that the whole country was going the way of Punjab and Haryana. That looks unduly pessimistic. The distortions in the newly offending states are small compared with those that once gripped Punjab and Haryana. India's efforts to cut sex selection may be starting to pay off after all. Now, we have just read the passage, and what do we draw from this particular passage? The passage discusses the challenge, right? Challenge of what? Challenge of challenge of reversing sex selection in countries like India and China, which is assumed to occur only at higher levels of wealth. It highlights South Korea also, right? It highlights South Korea as what? As one of the few countries that have succeeded in reversing the trend. However, recent evidence suggests that India may be making progress in improving its sex ratio at birth, despite having a, you can say that lower GDP. Um, so per capita compared to South Korea when it reversed the trend. So you would find out economist Surjit Bhalla and you could find out Ravinder Kaur, right? Surjit Bhalla and Ravinder Kaur used National Sample Surveys, which is known as NSS, right? So um, to show what an improvement in India's sex ratio attributed to change in behavior among parts of India's middle class. The passage suggests that the success in reversing sex selection may be linked to change in the economic profile of the population and highlight the role of government campaign in supporting this change. So that is what the main idea of the text is. So if we go for the style of the text, so what do we find out? The style of the passage is, you can say that analytical, and you can also say that informative one. Analytical and informative. It uses statistical data and comparisons to present an argument about the progress in reversing sex selection in India. The passage includes specific figures and examples to support its claim, making it data driven and evidence based, isn't it? So the next you could find out the tone of the text. So the tone of the passage is, you can say that optimistic, uh, caut- caut- cautiously optimistic, and analytical one, like I pointed. While it acknowledges the historical challenges in reversing sex selection, it presents new evidence that suggests positive changes in India. The tone remains, you can say that, positive in nature, and focused on what presenting factual information without expressing strong opinions. Well, let's move to the question. So the question stated here, which of the following statements would strengthen the argument presented in the passage? And the choices are: South Korea's success in reversing the trend of sex selection proves that economic development is the only factor influencing the practice, isn't it? So, second is stated the campaign against sex-selective abortion in India and China has been ineffective due to the cultural belief deeply rooted in society. Three, the increase in India's sex ratio at birth, particularly among the middle class, suggests that efforts to curb sex selection may be producing positive results. And the fourth, decline in the size of the emerging middle class in India has contributed to a decrease in the prevalence of sex selection. So, so you can find out the increase in India's sex ratio at birth, particularly among the middle class, suggests that efforts to curb sex selection may be producing positive results. Right. So that you can find out in option three, right? So that strengthen the argument by providing evidence that efforts to curb sex selection, particularly among the middle class in India, may be, you can say that, effective, right? This align with the main argument of the passage, which discusses how changes in the behavior. Main argument is what? How, uh, you can say that, changes in behavior, okay,